what's going on everyone? Welcome back to Woody's Workshop. Today I'm going to be showing you how to replace the glow plugs and the glow plug control module on a BMW 335D or an X5 diesel, either E90 or E70 with the M57 engine. It's a fairly common failure point. If you live in a colder climate, you probably will notice some issues on cold start, sub 10 degrees. You might have some misfires, rough running when you first start the car, or it may not start at all. But if you live in a warmer climate, you're probably not going to notice this have any type of effect on the vehicle, especially from a startability perspective. It is a pretty common failure, and you will get a check engine light. Here are the actual glow plugs that we're going to be replacing. If I can get that to focus, that'd be great. That's one of the glow plugs. And here is the BMW part number. Oh, don't want to drop that. I can figure out how to work this. That is the BMW part number right there. And here is the glow plug control module. This is essentially the module that controls the activation of the glow plugs themselves. And here is the part number for that. So yeah, I'm going to show you how to do it, and let's get right to it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to have to do is remove all these, the microfilter and the whole windshield cowling. We are going to have to remove this acoustic cover and eventually remove the intake manifold, so we're going to need all this out of our way. Just a couple 8mm screws that hold this on. This is fairly easy to take off. This AUC sensor, you just do a quarter turn towards the front of the car and it comes right out. In total you have 6 8mm on your microfilter housing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then holding this cowling on that's underneath it, there's 1 8mm in each corner. Unplug this electrical connector right here. Pull that harness out of the way. That's your microfilter housing. Also, how-to on how to replace that. There you go. Bonus content. All right, now to remove this acoustic cover, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 5mm Allens. Just go ahead and zip those out. Take your oil cap off. There you go. Alright, so now in order to remove this back part of the acoustic cover, we're going to need to remove both of these cross braces here. And we're going to do that by taking a flathead screwdriver and removing this plug. It's a quarter turn deal. You just stick a flathead in there, quarter turn, it pops right out, toss it up there. And you are going to need a E14 socket for each of the smaller bolts on the strut towers, and you will need a E18 for the larger bolt here. And you don't have to, you do have to remove both of those completely, but this center one you just have to loosen, and the bars are actually forked, so you can just slide them right out. Like I said, you just have to loosen this. You don't have to fully remove it. Once that's loose, you can just slide them out. And this is what I was talking about right there. You can see how they're split. Okay, now that we have those crossbars out of the way, in order to remove this last section of the acoustic cover, there are 3 10mm bolts up under the cowl panel here. 1, 2 in the center, and 3 on the driver's side. We're going to need to just go ahead and remove those. remove this section here. It's going to make your life much easier when you're trying to remove that last piece of acoustic cover. Still kind of a pain. There you go. You can see it wraps around the back of the cylinder head. That's what makes it kind of a pain in the ass to get off. All right, now that that's out of the way, first go ahead and throw your oil cap back on, because you don't want to risk dropping something in the head. I am going to unbolt this battery cable, the cable that goes to the starter, just so it makes it easier when I'm lifting out the intake manifold. I'm not having to fight with this or move it out of the way, and this is just something easy that I do to give myself a little more breathing room. This is a 13 millimeter. And I usually throw the cover back on just so there's no, accidental touches of that battery post, because it is hot. I haven't disconnected the battery, but this just lets me move this up out of the way. There's no voltage on this. It's completely flat, so you can just put it out of the way and be done with it. Okay, so now we're going to remove this acoustic cover. On an X5, this might be a little different. This is different on a 3 Series, but there are just 3 T20s, 1, 2, 3. On my vehicle, unfortunately, I'm missing these two, so I just have this one in the center. Take that out. That'll allow you to pull this up and out of the way. Just give you easier access to disconnecting this charge pipe. One thing I am going to say is my vehicle is deleted, so I no longer have an EGR cooler here, and I don't have the EGR valve in here. So that does change this job a little bit for me. Normally you would have to unbolt this stuff. It's just a couple 5 millimeter Allens. You'll need a long 5 millimeter Allen. Normally you'd have to unbolt these in order to get to this bracket that holds on the, I guess it holds the whole intake assembly onto the cylinder head. Since I don't have any of those components in my way, I don't have to remove that stuff. All I'm gonna have to do is disconnect the electrical connector to the throttle body, disconnect this charge air pipe, and I can just unbolt the bracket right there, and then I'm ready to unbolt the intake and remove it. So that does save me a little bit of time since this vehicle is deleted. But if your vehicle is not, just know that that's going to be an additional step that you're going to have. So disconnect your throttle body. There's 2 tabs on each side. Pop that off. Pop it out of this clip right here. Get that up out of your way. You can just push that harness to the side. Now we're ready to pop off the charge air cooler. It's got a big metal clip on it. Raise the clip. Pop that off. Push it off to the side. Sorry, it's actually an 11 millimeter here on this bracket. Take that off. Now over on this side over here, before we unbolt the intake manifold, there's a couple things you need to unplug. This is your boost pressure sensor here on the top of the intake. You got to unplug that, and there are 2 brackets bolted on the side of the intake. There's one here for your dipstick, and they're both 10 millimeters. So there's one here for your dipstick, and there's one here holding on your vacuum supply line to your vacuum brake booster. That one is kind of on the back side. So you'll need like a 1/4 inch 10 millimeter or something like that to get this off. Once those are off and loose, there is one connector on the back side. If your vehicle's not deleted, if you still have the swirl flaps on your intake manifold, there's a big square or a rectangle connector back here that you will need to disconnect for the servo motor for the swirl flaps. One thing I did forget to mention is you do need to unplug the fuel pressure sensor on the back of the fuel rail. It's very easy to disconnect. You just pop it off. So once you have your dipstick unbolted, your vacuum supply line over here unbolted, and then the 2 connectors on the back side, the one for your swirl flaps if you have them, and your fuel pressure sensor unplugged. Now you're ready to unbolt the intake. Across the top here you have all 10 millimeter bolts, and then down in the pockets here, you have 11 millimeters. I'll go ahead and take those off now. One additional thing to note is on the third bolt from the firewall, on these top 10 millimeter bolts of the intake manifold, I'll show you. There is a little bracket. Looks like this. Maybe not. Hang on. Well, I don't know. I can't seem to figure out how to work the camera. Maybe if I bring it closer. Oh. Well, this is a problem. Well, anyways. So yeah, this bracket right here goes on the third bolt from the firewall of those 10 millimeter bolts on the top of the intake. And all this is just a bracket that holds the nut for the acoustic cover. So you're going to want to remember to put this back on, or you'll be kicking yourself in the ass when you go to put it back together and then you realize there's no nut there. So just don't forget about it. Now that all that's unbolted, we're ready to remove the intake. There it is. You do want to keep an eye out for these little metal plugs here that go on the bolt holes. Sometimes they stick to the cylinder head, and if you're not paying attention, it is possible they could fall down into the intake runner, which would mean you're going to have a really bad day when you go to start it. So just make sure that everything is there and nothing is missing. That's very important, and just keep an eye on it. Alright, so here's a look at the EGR delete pipe and the swirl flap delete plugs on my intake manifold, just so I could kind of give you a visual of what I was talking about. Normally there'll be these little flap actuators in these holes, and there'll be a rod that's clipped in here, here, and here, and there'll be a big actuator, a big electrical actuator here, and there'll be a plug on the back side of this. This is actually the plug right here. This is the plug I was referring to. So on the back side of the intake, you have this plug down here, and you have this plug that goes on the boost pressure sensor, and then this is the very back plug that I was referring to on the fuel pressure sensor on the back of the fuel rail. One thing that you would want to look at, it doesn't really apply to me because I have recently done it and my vehicle's deleted, but you want to check those runners, those intake runners, for any carbon buildup. Let's see if I can zoom in there and kind of show you what a clean one looks like. So that is squeaky clean. A little bit of oil, but that's totally normal. No carbon though, just straight clean. Same goes for the ports in the head. You can see down in there. Let's see if I can get the camera down in there. Yeah, I'm not the best cameraman, but you see, it's clean. Now, if you take this apart and it looks like a bunch of black bubble gum in there, you might want to consider doing a carbon cleaning at this point. Some people recommend, well, some people clean it with the valve cover on. That's not really the correct way to do it. The correct way to do it is to remove the valve cover. Either you clean the runners there, or you send it out and have it cleaned. Also, the intake manifold can get a lot of carbon in it as well. You can see mine's still kind of, I don't know if I'll be able to get the correct angle there, but you can see mine's still kind of gunked up. And I had this thing professionally cleaned by a local cylinder head shop that did a sonic cleaning on it. And when I put it on, it was spotless. So, you know, this is just kind of, probably put about 10,000 miles on it since then. So this is just kind of normal daily oil consumption coming through there. But so, you know, once you check that stuff out, you're ready to do the job we're here to do. There are 6 glow plugs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. There are little tabs on each side. You just squeeze, pinch, and boop, just pop them right off. They are a deep 10mm socket. We'll get these out. And you should torque them. I don't know what the torque spec is. I'm not much of a torque wrench guy. I probably should be, but I just don't over tighten shit. So I tend to not really have any problems. Knock on wood. And once you get all these electrical connectors off, you're ready to replace them. And then once that's done, we will get to the glow plug relay module. That's where the fun really starts. And it's down there. I mean, you can't see it. I mean, you could kind of see it. It's like right where my finger is, like right. Yeah, there it is. Super easy, right? I mean, you could, if you have like those little Burger King guy hands, you can just get down there and just, you know, pop it out. No big deal. So I'll show you how that goes, and let's do it. One additional thing I forgot to mention before I go ahead and remove these is if you have like a snap-on deep 10, it may not work on these just because the profile of the glow plug it will bottom out inside the socket. So what I use is a Harbor Freight, that's right, Harbor Freight, purple. This used to be purple back in the day, purple 10mm. This is just a little bit deeper and lets you get on the glow plugs nice and easy. So there we go. There are all my crappy looking glow plugs that we're going to be replacing. And all these are just a resistor, really. All they do is warm up. Since diesel engines don't have spark plugs, the whole purpose of these is on a cold start, they're supposed to preheat the air in the fuel mixture. Since a diesel engine combusts from compression, this helps preheat the air and the fuel in order for there to be combustion. So if these aren't working correctly, or your relay module or control module, whatever you want to call it, isn't working correctly, when you go to fire this thing up in a real cold morning, it's going to run like shit. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and put our new plugs in. I usually get them started by hand, just because they're a really fine thread, and you do not want to mess up the threads in the cylinder head. I think that goes without saying. And also, if you did, you would probably have a really hard time fixing these, just because they're so deep, and the way these runners are set up on the cylinder head, you would have a hard time getting any type of tap or thread repair tool down there. So just avoid it and put them in by hand. Don't go crazy. All right, once those are all tightened up, you can just pop the electrical connectors back on. Okay, so now that portion of the job is done. We've got all our 6 new glow plugs in. Now we're going to move on to replacing this. Now this could be the hardest part of this job, or it could be the easiest part. Probably not the easiest, probably going to be the hardest. But once you start doing it, you'll see why I say that. Really, there's only 2 nuts holding this on. There's a 10mm here and one over here, right there. That's not the hard part. The hard part is this connector right there has a lock tab here on the front, which you can see. It sits in the car like this. And you can see that. You can see that tab. Super easy, right? Well, it also has one on the back. Well, the cylinder head sits right up against this. I mean, it's sitting in there like this. There's no way you can get to that tab. So the easiest way I've found to do this is to take the circular connector off. That one you can just pop out. Kind of touch on the front tab there and kind of get it loose on the right hand connector. And then I'll go ahead and unbolt it. And once it's unbolted, I can kind of move it back and move it to where I can kind of get to the back side of that. And then I'll use this tool here, a very long panel popper tool, to get down there and get behind and then pop that back side of the connector off. So I would say there's probably a 50% chance you're going to break that electrical connector. It's happened to me, it's happened to everyone that's done this more than once. So if that happens, don't worry about it. That's all I'm going to say. As long as you make sure that front tab is still intact, 50% is good enough. If you break the one in the back, it's not a big deal. It's still going to stay on there. So just don't worry about it. Just be cautious with that one in the front and you won't have any problems. So I'll do my best to show it to you. It's really hard to see down there. I don't know if that's going to happen. Try. So you can see the circular connector is right there. And then the rectangle connector, pretty much forget about it. It's like it's back there somewhere once you move all that crap out of the way. So I'll show you how I get it out, or I'll do my best to show you how I get it out, and let's see how I can set up the camera. Okay, so I tried to get the camera in there as best I can. You're not really going to be able to see it. Unfortunately, it's just too much shit in the way. But the first thing I'm going to do is pop that round connector off. It's not held in very tight. You can just take a long screwdriver or whatever, give it a little tap, and it'll pop right off. Then I'm going to take the 2 10mm off. I'm using a 1/4 inch with a 1/4 inch swivel 10mm. It's not super easy to get down here, especially if you have bigger hands. And if you drop one of these, you can kiss it goodbye, because finding something here is going to be really difficult. A lot of times when I have stuff like this, I'll just loosen it up and I will use a pocket screwdriver with a magnet on the back or something similar to just go down there and get the nut. That way I avoid any risk of dropping it or anything like that. And now to get the second one. There's the second one. Just those 2 10s. Now here's the fun part, getting that rectangle connector off. Like I said, I want to kind of push down on the front tab first. Oh, and there it goes. Look at that, I broke it. See, that's what I was talking about. And it's pretty much, there's a high likelihood you're going to break this. Doesn't take much, especially if you're on a higher mileage vehicle. I'm going to try my best not to completely butcher this. Once it's unbolted, you can kind of move it up off the bracket. This might take me a little bit. Once you got it off the bracket, you can go to the back side of the connector. This is just one of those things you're going to have some serious patience with. If you get frustrated, take a quick break, come back in a little bit. Don't let it beat you up. I got it. Just a little bit tricky. It's just nice to know, BMW was thinking of the technician when they decided to put this down here. Making it easy. And there it is. See? Easy. Just like that. Just fell right out. Alright, now we're going to install the new glow plug relay module. This is difficult to get plugged in. You got to kind of figure out a way to fit your hand down there and kind of push the connector. Kind of sucks. Alright, so I got it plugged in. I just gotta put it on the studs. There we go. Put our two 10mm nuts back on, and then we can proceed and put the intake manifold back on. Okay, so we have our new glow plug control module installed. We've got it on the studs, it's bolted in. I was able to push both connectors on. Now what you're going to want to do is just wipe off all the sealing surfaces for your intake manifold. Once those are all clean and there's no debris or anything between the gaskets, you can go ahead and put your intake manifold back on. Like I said, just make sure that all these little metal rings are installed. Make sure none of them fell or anything like that. So now just plug everything back in. And we're gonna snug up our nuts on the bottom, kind of work your way around. You don't want to tighten them down fully. Kind of just get them started. Don't forget, on the third 10mm bolt from the firewall, you have to put your bracket back on for your acoustic cover. Alright, now that the intake's all bolted back up, make sure you remember to plug in all your connectors, and if you have the swirl flaps, don't forget the connector on the back. and your fuel pressure sensor back here. We also have the two 10 millimeters. They go on the side, one for the dipstick and one for the vacuum supply line for the vacuum booster. Go ahead and install the back and front section of your acoustic covers here. These can be kind of a pain in the ass to get in. This is the front section. Oh, don't forget to take your oil cap off and then install your front section. Now that we have the acoustic cover back in, we can install this trim cowl piece that was held in with the three 10 millimeter bolts. Once that's installed, you can slide the strut braces back in, put your oil cap back on. So we've got our strut braces back installed. Now we're ready to reinstall the cowl panel. This has to slide underneath the windshield wiper trim up here. Comes up and under, just like that. Alright, so that's it. That's replacing the glow plug relay module or control module and glow plugs on a BMW M57. In the dealership, this job would probably cost anywhere, if I had to guess, I would say anywhere from $1,000 to $1,200. At home, if you want to do this on your own, it's not that difficult. Just be patient and you can get it done. Save you on that labor costs, and also if you are going to do it yourself, you can actually get the glow plugs from Bosch. You can get a Bosch style plug, which is essentially the same thing as the BMW plug, just without the BMW box. So yeah, I mean, you can get the Bosch glow plugs and the module here for about $320 to $350 online. So I mean, you're talking you could save yourself easily $600+ worth of labor if you feel up to the task. So as always, I hope you found the video helpful, and if you liked it, please consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you next time.